Okay, so good afternoon. I know I said during the earlier podcast that I was going to be on at 1. It just didn't happen to work out like that. But I'm on now. And so we're going to have a little discussion today about what the state longitudinal database system is. Back in 2008, when President Obama was elected, President Obama had an initiative, I'm going to call it an initiative, that was to change, because he was all about change, to change the system of education in America. And he had 4 basically pillars of his educational change model. And one of those was the state longitudinal database. And the whole idea behind the state longitudinal database in the first place was to collect data on students. And don't forget, the whole idea behind collecting data on students is because of the fact that, well, that's going to help them learn. Because I'm sure that you can imagine that collecting all kinds of data on kids just magically makes them suddenly I'm giggling because it's just silly. But I mean, obviously, the reason why they wanted to collect data, and you'll have people who tell you, well, if we can't figure out, what nationality they are, or do they speak English, or I mean, they can come up with 107,000 different reasons why you need to collect this data, and collecting this data is going to help us put in place programs that will help children learn. Well, if that were the case, and I always get in trouble for saying this, and I'll continue to say it anyway. If that were the case, then none of us would be here today. I mean, it's literally, if you just think about it in a commonsensical way, if kids couldn't learn and we couldn't produce children with higher learning skills without a database of information from which to be able to promulgate uh, their ability to learn, the techniques that were going to make them able to learn, how did we get them? How did anything happen? I mean, how did Jonas Salk, for example, come to pass? I mean, what about all of the people who have worked for NASA and put rockets into space and all this how does this happen then, if really we couldn't have done any of that without some kind of a database that we've collected on students? So I'm going to walk you through this map that I made. Lynn Hoblitz and I, Lynn was a board member of ROPE for a long time, and she helped me put this kind of schematic together. And this was all based on the 4 pillars. So the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, the ARA, I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was the fuel, that was the money that was going to create all of this. And so one of the things we had to do was turn around the lowest performing schools, and we had to use Common Core state standards to do that. And we had to have a statewide longitudinal database, that's in green. And then we had to recruit and develop and retrain teachers and principals and that kind of thing. So this was all part of the big educational reorg, right? The change. So I want you to look at all of this section in the middle where it says statewide longitudinal data system, and it has all these little green boxes. All of these little green boxes actually are data collection centers that we already have at the federal level. And let's not forget, by the way, Linda McMahon was, the Senate did approve Linda McMahon. So she is now going to be the head of the Federal Department of Education, which we've been assured is going to go away, right? So we've been assured that the Federal Department of Education is going to go away. Linda McMahon has now been invested in, has her investiture in that office. And so we've been assured it's going to go away. I don't necessarily believe that this is going to happen, because I think what is going to happen is that all of the data, all of the working groups that have anything to do with the workforce are going to go to the Department of Labor. And I think the Department of Labor is going to be the de facto Department of Education, because we don't really care about educating children. We just care about them getting a job. Because they have to be productive members of society. If they're not paying taxes, how can we, as elected people and bureaucrats, how can we execute policy if we have no money to be able to do that? So we have to produce children that can get jobs so that they can be working members of society in order to continue to churn out our taxes. And if you think that that's cynical, I'll agree. I mean, it totally sounds cynical. I'm not going to argue with you on that point, but I will tell you that it's not cynical when you go back and you look at the scope of the Department of Education, what its underpinnings are, where it came from, what it actually does. It's really not about helping kids learn. It's about staffing a big business model, right? So what I want to do is I want to pull in the article that I wrote the other day, because I think it's going to work if we just kind of work our way through this article. And I think it will start making sense kind of after we do that. So here is the front page of the article. And I've got this in here with all of the information, with the green part, that's the data. So there have been two bills that have been introduced. They're actually being heard in committee right now, actually. SB 222, 224. I don't know about SB 141. But I do know that SB 224 is being heard. So SB 224 was created as we needed to create a state longitudinal database system. And so what I really wanted to do was show you guys what we have so far, because I think it'll be instructive, because this is something that we worked on from about 2008 to 2012, was researching this idea of a state longitudinal database system and about collecting information on students. And so what I want to do is just kind of walk you through this so that you kind of know what we have and what's already out there and what's collecting information on your student right now. And I want to point out, because I think it's a really good point to point it out. So we've had this database installed since, I believe, 2014. What's happened to our scores for reading and math? If, and again, I'm being kind of commonsensical here, so forgive me. If this state longitudinal database was supposed to capture information that was supposed to help us catapult these students into better learning environments and greater educational attainment, how is it that it's been in effect for nearly a decade and we're falling and not rising? So before anybody tells you we need to collect more data, let's find out what data we're collecting and has it actually helped us at all? And I'm going to say it's not helped us, first of all, because frankly, all you need to do is look at the proficiency levels of math and whoops, hold on a second. All right, can you see something now, Julia? Because Julia just said, I can't see anything. I hope this works. I hope she can see it now. Okay, so I can see it on my screen, so I'm hoping you guys can see it. All right, so that's the thing that we need to talk about is what are we collecting now? And has what we're collecting now catapulted our students into greater economic attainment? Okay, so let's look at what we have. Here's what we know. The Race to the Top grant in Oklahoma. We actually applied for one. We got one. It was worth almost $5 million. And this portion that we got, the $5 million, was specifically to construct the state longitudinal database. And that was done in 2012. So we know that the Oklahoma created something called a P20 Council. Julia can tell you, okay, good. Can tell you how many meetings we went to of the P20 Council and how not great fun that was. But yes, there was a P20 Council. It was created to oversee this whole, the P20 Council was supposed to have gone away. It was supposed to have sunset in 2015. But I just saw something recently online about a P20 Council in relation to data and data collection on students. So I was very concerned about that. Now, we know that the WAVE, this is what it's called, the WAVE. The WAVE is the Oklahoma State Department of Education's primary system for collecting data from schools to perform necessary duties and functions. And I do want to mention here, when I was researching this article and I was going out and looking at information, there were so many, oh, thank you, Julia. Very good. Oh, that's super handy. I looked at that one, and the problem was what I was just getting ready to say when you posted that. They must be redoing the OSDE website, which has been a boondoggle for forever. It's just very antiquated, hard to find anything. But I mean, I've been researching on it for 15 years, so it was easy for me. So when I went out and started finding some of these things, so many of the links that are on there are dead links. That's very, very not helpful. And so when I found that link that Julie was just showing us about the P20 Council, it was pretty general, and there was a link to show what it was, and then I couldn't get to it. There wasn't anything, there was no way to get me to the link that was going to find the P20 Council. It was a broken link. Also, I'm going to remind everybody, or the people, if people don't know, so Julia and Lynn and I worked with Representative Jason Nelson in 2012 and on to try to get a law that was passed that we wanted to stop the state longitudinal database. That was our whole goal, was to stop it. And we worked with Representative Nelson, and we got a bill put together that was the bill that I mentioned right here. And I think I might be able to make this just a little bit bigger so you guys might be able to see this better. Oh, yes, that works. Okay, so you'll notice 70 OS 3-168. So that was the law that we were hoping was going to stop the state longitudinal database. It didn't. Basically, all that law said was they're going to collect this data, and because they're going to collect this data, we just expect that all of the data will be published so that parents can see what data is being collected on their kids. So it was a transparency bill. It wasn't a bill that was meant to quash the database. It was to just make it so that parents basically could see all of the data that was being entered into the database. So we do know that the OSDE has a data governance board, and I actually had to go find this data governance board by an entirely different way, because again, the link was broken and I couldn't get to it. So this was written in 2023. It was a memorandum actually to Superintendent Walters himself. And it basically says that the Student Data Accessibility, Transparency and Accountability Act, which is for the data, which is what we told you about, basically has to have certain things, and it has to be accessible and transparent. One of the things it has to have is a data governance board. So according to this, in 2023, this is your data governance board. And I went out to try to see if that was actually the case, but I couldn't find it. I did find Serena Reinhart on LinkedIn, and she is not the director of data governance anymore. She's in another place in the OSDE. There's a data request group, and these are the people that are responsible for data requests. And this is a request rubric. So this is how you get to request information from the state database, and you have to fill this out apparently. And this is the process that tells you exactly how it is that you are going to be able to get your data. So they have a little flow chart that tells how you're going to be able to get the data. Julia, ironically, the broken link is called Smart Start. Yes, there are all kinds of broken links on that thing. I definitely hope that they are able to solve that problem. So we do know all of these things. So here's your data governance board. So we know this. All right. So, and I totally messed that up. So hang on one second. I keep forgetting if I close the screen, it closes it everywhere. It's like closing a door, closes it everywhere. All right. So we're back to the article again. So we also know that they have a data privacy program plan, and this is very large, but I couldn't find anything newer than 22. And I think it's because they do it for like 5 years or something. So the next one isn't going to be due until 27 or something. I don't know. But they did have a plan. It's quite large. It does talk about the privacy, how you require or how you handle personally PII, personally identifiable information, and all of this kind of stuff. So there's actually a thing that does, this is the document that actually creates that. So you can get these links. And I did it again. You can actually find those links in the article that I wrote, and you can go right to them. It's not a hard thing to do at all. Okay, so let's talk about what the, all right. So this is the part that I really want to show you. So this is the list of WAVE code tables. The code and the tables describe the type of data that's collected. So I'm going to show you some of this, and this can't possibly be the whole of it, because the last time I got a copy of the WAVE, which was 2014, maybe, it was this thick. So I don't think this, because when I look at this one, this is only, how many pages is this? This is only 119 pages. So I don't think this is all of it, but these are the codes. When you see the word SIF, it's Student Information Framework. It's the basic coding that on top of which they put all of these new data entry fields. So now they're telling you that according to, and I think this was written in, I'm not actually sure when this was written, but this was updated, I think, recently. So it says the grade book, special programs, student information systems, codes and lists related to school staff, students, contacts, calendars, courses, schedules, attendance, and discipline objectives. You'll be very interested to see those. Additional guidance, common code sets, so just sets of codes that they commonly use. All right, so I'm going to kind of fly through here because there are just a couple that I want to hit. Here are some of them: bilingual, English is a second language. These are the things that they're collecting. Whether a student has a service, is it instructional? What is it related to? Do they qualify for free and reduced lunch or services? Now here's an interesting one. Are they homeless? Are they immigrants? So do you remember that Governor Stitt fired 3, and there's a new article out on our friend V1SUT, so please go to v1sut.com and look it up. It talks about Kendra Wesson, who was fired from the state school board by the governor, and she gives an interview with our friend Mary at Visit, and you really need to go read that article. It's very interesting. But if you'll remember, the whole firing seemed to become initiated by the fact that Ryan Walters wanted to be able to enumerate number the numbers of kids, students that were in our public schools, and he wanted to be able to number those so that we would know how many there were, so we could determine budget and a lot of things better. Well, apparently that was not okay with our governor. He did not want that to happen, and released the 3 people who voted on that agenda item. But it's interesting because apparently we already do what that was, because if you'll notice, it says it right here, immigrant education. So there has to be something in there for that. All right. Uh-oh. Nothing is showing on the screen again. How is this working? Hold on. Sandy says there are at least 2 people on that list who no longer work at OSCE. Okay. And that was in 23, wasn't that I said? Julie said, remember when the privacy was breached and we found all kinds of personal student data? Yes. And there's an article about that on our old blog spot. And Dorn, you still can't see anything on the screen? And Sandy says she can't see what I'm talking about either. I'm looking at it, but I'm not looking at an actual, let me see if I can look on YouTube and make sure that this is, no, I can see it from YouTube. Uh-oh, I wonder what's going on then. I hope you can see it now. Okay. All right, good. Okay. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate that because I was getting a little panicked there. All right. I'm going to blow this up though, because looking at it is not working. And let me see if I can blow it up so you guys can see this a little bit better. And I have to keep switching back. Oh, that's much better. Okay. So hopefully now you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. Okay. So I'll go back to comments here in just a second. But this is something that I want to point out. Here's something else. DHS state custody, family issue, physical or mental health issues, pregnant. Now, I want you to pay attention to the fact that your students enrolled in public school can have this data collected on them. We do know, right, that data has a footprint and it doesn't just disappear. And there are ways that it has to be handled to make it disappear. And if our state isn't doing that, then this information is captured and kept. So somewhere on the internet, someday, your student may come up against this data being employed, and it could be employed against them. And that's the problem. Juvenile justice, have they been in the juvenile justice system? I'm sorry that I'm going through this fast, but don't forget, if you go to the article, you can look up all of this stuff yourself. You just click on the link because I found it for you. The student has self-identified tribal affiliation, doubled up families living with relatives or friends that can't find affordable housing, unsheltered, hotels, motels, house building trailer, doubled up. This is identified as gifted and talented. I'm trying to transitional bilingual. Again, I'm unclear. I mean, okay, let me go down. Okay, now these are all of the things that they're collecting. Religious organization. Are we supposed to be collecting that kind of thing? I think that's against FERPA. Isn't that against FERPA? Oh, and like Dorn says, some of these data points are subjective, and that's exactly the point. And Dorn, this is one reason why I like you so very much. That's exactly correct. And like I said, religious organization, fraternal organization, Why are we collecting that information? Oh, this is service funding sources. Oof, that's interesting. Service type code. Health services is the type of service that adapts the curriculum materials or instructions for students identified as needing special education because of delay, just delay, not just disability. Medical services, nursing services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, psychological services. These are the things that they're collecting data on, guys. Oh my goodness, it's just homebound. Let me see if I can get down to some of the other ones, and then I'll switch over and infant, toddler. This is collection of grade levels applicable to this school calendar. Infant, toddler, preschool, because I know what Julie is going to say, cradle to the grave. That's what Sandy's going to say too, because it's right. This is right here. Right here. Now you know. Okay? And we're all better when we know, right? All right. This is incident action list. And this is one that I really, Julie and I brought this one up before. You can't self-identify as tribal. That's very interesting. That's a good point. I thought pregnant was a medical condition. See, you guys are bringing up these great points. I should have had Sandy. I should have had you and Julia climb on here with me so that you can mention those things, because I have to go to the other page to be able to flip through them. So I can't see the comments. I have to come back and do it, which is disappointing. So I'll come back in just a second after I get these last ones. Yes. And by the way, this is something that's very, very, very important. And I want to make sure that all of you who are listening and watching this right now understand this fully. The reason why Julia and Sandy and everybody else and I are completely against healthcare, anything in a public school, is because HIPAA does not work in a public school. HIPAA is only for medical facilities, only for that, only. So if you do any kind of a medical anything inside a school, FERPA overrides HIPAA. FERPA does not have the protections that HIPAA has that keep your information private. And don't forget, HIPAA doesn't even have that, because how many times have they accidentally released all these health files on the internet? So this is super, super, super important. And you guys have got to remember this, because when you talk to your representatives and your senators about all this healthcare nonsense that they're trying to inject into public schools, you tell them no, because it does not protect none of that. No data on health is protected under FERPA in a public school, which means that all of those health records are not protected. Please make sure you remember that and tell people that, because this is not okay. All right, so if you think about this, these are discipline instances, and they are recorded in this database and saved in the database. Now, I was not I was not a good student, and my poor sainted mother, I know she had a bald spot in back while I was in school and young, because she pulled her hair out because of me. So think about what would have happened possibly to me if all of the things that I did in school, which weren't minor, I mean, we didn't do drugs and things like that, but I mean, just minor things, but they followed me all the way through. What if you did something major? Okay, bus suspension, change of placement, pending expulsion, conflict resolution or anger management services mandated, corporal punishment, counseling mandated, demerit, detention, expulsion without services. Look at this: letter of apology, law enforcement referral, juvenile justice referral, reprimand, restitution, Saturday school probation, substance abuse counseling mandated, substance abuse treatment mandated, suspension, in and out of school, unilateral removal, work detail, unsatisfactory behavior. I mean, guys, these are These are literally things that are data that are being collected on our kids. Here's some more. Alcohol related student behavior associated with the incident, arson, drugs, sale of illegal drugs, fighting, harassment, bullying, hazing, inappropriate use of medication, insubordination, kidnapping, obscene behavior, physical robbery, trespassing, violation. These are all things. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is really bad. Well, I haven't looked this over in a while, so you guys are getting my actual reaction. So this is all illegal. All of this is completely illegal. How are we doing this? You cannot collect information. This is under the pupil rights, PPRA is what they call it. Parental pupil rights. Oh, sorry, Sandy, help me. Sandy. What is it? PPRA. The Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. I remembered. Okay, Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. All of those things that I just showed you here, that's all against the PPRA. That's a complete violation. The school cannot collect those things. And yet there are absolute codes. And where did I say, gosh, we're only on page 18 of this list, guys. Everybody needs to get this and looked. Where did the incident occur in I mean, we could go through these. I'm suggesting that you guys go through these. Wow. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. I suggest you go through these and then you figure out what's being collected, because we and that's a fact. Government only has laws to protect itself, not to protect individuals. But that's what's crazy. And I'm immediately going to call a couple of lawmakers as soon as we get off of this and go, red alert. They're collecting things. At least they have codes in the database for things that they're not allowed to collect on. So I will immediately be call somebody on that. Okay, so I think we've gotten through. No, yes. So this is the one that we need to share now. So remember, those codes are in that article. You can click on that tab and go look through the codes yourself and share those with people and say, did you know that this is data that our schools are collecting on our kids? All right, so this is something new. This is the 2025 system upgrades for the Student Information Framework. So this is the bottom line of everything. So we're being told that we need to have a new database system to collect data, and we're being told that we need to have different, I guess, information that's being collected. So this is this is all the new stuff that they're doing. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but note that they're changing codes related to student participation in a specific program and schools and staffs, that kind of thing. So they're showing how they're doing this and where they're located. I'm going to flip through here really fast. Oh, we knew this. Yes, this is correct. You're exactly right. And you're right. They have done so many things and I've totally forgotten about this. I'm going to try to, let me enlarge this so that people can see this better. All right. So that's much better. All right. So if you go and you look at it, they're adding codes, different codes, transfers, new codes, promotion and retention status. Okay. So they're adding immaturity, illness. That's interesting. Okay. Here's another one that shows new additions to grade level, peeps. Infant, toddler, and preschool. Remember, we killed a bill. Well, Linda Murphy, I think, actually did it all by herself, killed a bill that was going to allow public schools to put in 3-year-olds. So I guess they were just assuming that was going to go. And so that's what they were doing. In school suspension, they've got new information for disciplinary actions that they're doing. Oh, and a renewed emphasis on the behavior part. Okay. All right. Oh, and I will point out there is a lot of federal reporting that's required, but don't forget, we're a state. We don't have to do it. The only reason why we have to do it is because we want to get federal money. So again, we do this for the feds and say the feds make us do it, but really we don't have to do it. We just want the money that comes with it. So when your leadership says things like how worried they are about schools and students and that kind of stuff, you might just remind them that they allow all kinds of data collection on kids. And is that super healthy? But does it matter because we're just getting money? So quality discipline data improves internal processes for identifying discipline trends locally and impacts early indicator warning systems. Okay, so I'm going to address that one thing before we move on. If a child is acting up, you deal with that child and you move on. You do that in any school. There is no reason, none, absolutely zero, for collecting that data. It is not somehow going to make that problem go away, that you've collected data, that you can identify that. You can identify it because it happened in the classroom and your teacher just said this happened in the classroom, right? That's it. Then you just say, you know what? I'm getting on the phone with the parents. I'm calling the parent. The parent's going to come down here. We're going to do whatever we're going to do. And that's it. There is no legitimate reason to collect this data on children. There just isn't. And then this is a great point, Sandy. How do they do this without parental consent? It violates all standards of research. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to, you and me and whoever else wants to, is going to write a letter that explains that kind of thing and then get it out to the powers that be, because that's it. What's happening right now and what we've just identified just on this program today is the fact that everything that Julie and Lynn and I were worried about all those years ago is absolutely happening anyway. And even though we worked so hard to get that stupid bill out and it didn't really do anything that we wanted it to do, we knew what it had to do. And it was, of course, we knew what it had to do. And that's why nobody wanted to do it, right? Because we couldn't have probably gotten money. I'm sure there has something to do. Yes, right. Has something to do with money. But this is the, and isn't that the truth? I hate to say it because it sounds kind of cheesy, but we have been right about so many of these things. And you're 100% right that we're right, Jules. I mean, this is what we did. She says we could only collect data on people that are in the government. And that's even not, I mean, we're collecting data on kids that aren't in the government and we're pulling them in, student transfer. So again, I'm not going to go establish clear policies. This is what is reported versus what is local. Building capacity, identify key personnel responsible for school discipline to become local experts and leaders. This is so much BS. I just can't even believe how they justify their jobs by making this BS up. I mean, I just can't even. I mean, this is just nuts. You don't collect data on kids to be able to do this. So here are all the reasons why they tell you, and I'm not going to go through all of this stuff. You guys can go through all of this stuff. But again, I do want to point out, lots of Native American data that they're taking here. This is enrollment that they've, oh, anybody see anything on this screen? I do. English learner, bilingual immigrant. So apparently we have been collecting that data. And so I guess that who really made it an issue was Governor Stitt then, right? I think that's who made it the issue, and who made it a political drama was our governor, because we were apparently already collecting this information. So again, if you want to go to our to the piece that I put up on the web, here are all of these. All you have to do is drag your, you can get them. They're right here. All right. Now I want to close out by doing something that is, I think is important before we leave for today. And that is, I want to go over with you a webinar on post-secondary. This is called the data and relationships behind post-secondary opportunities. Okay. Post-secondary opportunities are, yes, the government. Good catch again, Dorn, dang it. Yes, let me show you something before I navigate to this other thing to help you out, Dorn. So if you go down to the bottom of the article on the website, you'll see that there is a video that I've embedded
Mr.
there.
McGorty was
This
talking
is
about earlier.
the video
And FERPA defines
that I
PII,
did,
and I
which
would really like you
was
to listen
the
as I read this definition, and I want you to be thinking about what does that actually mean.
It was the presentation that I made to the House Admin Government Oversight and Repealer Committee during October
that would
of
allow a
2013.
reasonable person
And
in
if
the
you
school
actually
community
watch
who does not
this
have
whole thing, and it's about an
and to
hour,
promote
but if you watch this
linkages
whole thing,
across the
you will
state.
find
Now,
out,
this
and you can
is this
probably
particular
even go
code
to
comes
some of
from
them.
a server.
You'll find out,
They
Dorn,
can't write
where
actually
all
are.
of
And I
this
think if you'll
data
notice the
comes
one that
in,
pops,
and
the middle
how
box is
I
the
mean,
person.
if
That is
everybody
National
knew
Education
how much data was
model,
being
you'll
collected,
find
and
information
where
on
voting status
voting
was one of them,
status. And the
religious
one at the
affiliation, which is
bottom
what they
is
got in trouble
religious
for, but they still
to
do it
travel
anyway.
on. Hopefully, that is the bill of
I have a
piece on the
couple
left is the
of,
front page of their concern me, I think, the most
I
over
literally
the
made, there
last
it
several
is.
years.
This is the big one.
And
This is the
this
schematic that
particular
shows you
database
all
shows
of the data
numerous
that the feds
opportunity that states
force
have
us
been
to
given
get for
to
money,
create a state longitudinal
and
database.
where it goes.
And
And
you
one
will
of the
note,
ones
if
that
you
we
look
have
down
to
at the
do
bottom,
is
and
this
it's kind of hard
civil
for me to
rights
see,
data.
you
That
have,
is one of the
I think
ones
altogether,
that we have to
I think if you
collect.
look
So
down at the
there you
bottom,
go.
there are 8
It's,
early
if you have
childhood
time to go
state
through that, I would
longitudinal
go through
database
that. It's,
systems,
even though it was done in
7 for
2013, sadly,
K-12,
it's
and this
still
is grants, I
completely
should say. No,
operable.
there's only
All
one
right, so
state
I want to go
longitudinal
back
database
to
system. These
this
are grants, so let me
thing
back
that
up
we
and
were
say
talking
that.
about, because
So there have been
I
8
want people
early
to see this.
childhood
This
grants
really
for the state
alarmed me.
longitudinal database system,
So
7 for K-12,
everybody who
6
is,
for
oh
post-secondary,
gosh, I'm
and
sorry, I didn't
4
realize
for
that.
workforce.
Thank you, because I'm not
So
hearing it. I don't have my,
the federal government.
thank you. I'm so glad you guys there. Okay. All right. So is that better now? I don't have my earphones in. I wasn't listening to what was happening on my computer. I think I'll do that just in case something like that happens again. And I'm like, oh no, I can hear it. Okay. Okay. I got it. All right. So now if you, to repeat what I said, if you want to go back and watch that video, then it will show you exactly where all that data goes. But I want to go back here to this building connections and practice, to this data and relationships behind post-secondary opportunities that I wanted you to see. Okay, great. Thank you. So we have always said, and I know Dr. Harrell and Julie and everybody else, we see the value in the fact that we do not educate children for jobs. We don't educate children for jobs. And here's the main reason, and let this sink in, and then we'll go through this last little part and finish up. If you educate a child for a job, you've stuck a child in a position where that's the only thing that child can do, because you've educated them for that one thing. And that's what we've said about widget makers. That's why these economic development things that the government keeps doing and Governor Stitt is so in favor of are so very bad. What used to happen is businesses would put out a job listing and say, we'll train. And then what would happen is you would go apply for the job. They decide whether or not you were going to be a fit. And then they train you for that job while you were on the job. So then you knew that job, but then you could also leave and go someplace else and get training at another job if you needed to. We don't have that anymore. Most companies don't train because they expect the government to do it. It's somehow now a government job. You train a child, and you don't train a child, you educate them. You give them information, you give them experiences, you show them videos, beautiful books, art, literature, all these kinds of things. You expose them to that. Their brain grows, and they are able to do all kinds of different things. They could do this, but then they could also do that, but then they could do something else. That's the difference between educating a child and training a child. Okay. So I hope that makes some sense. So when we go and we look at this, this is going to, I think, really illustrate. So we're looking at outcomes. What's outcomes? Outcome-based education, Common Core state standards, all the same thing. So basically what we want to connect data on these kids so that we can help their outcomes, change their outcomes, move their outcomes. That's not why we educate a child. This is probably the most telling document I've come upon in a very long time. And this is brand new. I mean, this is, when was this? 23 or something like that. So it's relatively brand new. And I need to make sure it's big enough so people can see it. And it is. I'm going to just enlarge it just a little tiny bit so we can see it a little bit better. All right. Explore and connect individual career and academic transition plans to improve aligned access to opportunities that prepare students for life after high school. Really stop and think about what they just said. They said, train a kid for a job. Make a kid learn how to make a widget. Introduce resources, including the new early warning. So if they're off the track for the widget maker, whatever that is, we got to get them back on track. Different aspirations, different pathways. These are all things that parents should be doing with their children. This isn't stuff that the government should be doing with children, but we're allowing them to do that because of the fact that we're allowing them to collect all this data on kids and allowing them to do this with them instead of the parent. What types of career aspirations do our students have? How do we know? Well, aren't the parents supposed to know that? And isn't that something, I mean, you can work with a school counselor on that, but the school counselor provides guidance, not a track, not education to a track. Here they show exactly how to do this. Here they show that you can, and I don't want to go through all of this stuff, but what I do want to do is I'm going to scroll down to a part that was, okay, we put into law, and we shouldn't have, something called the Individual Career Plan. The Individual Career Plan, the ICAP, is what schools are now collecting data on every student for. And it's basically, if you want to do a career, we're going to put you on that career path. So ostensibly you have this opportunity to do that career, but you're locking them essentially in that career. I was 18 when I graduated from high school. I had no idea what I wanted to be, ended up becoming a wife and mother, and didn't go to school until I was 27 years old. But I knew I wanted to go to be a marine biologist. So I went into biology. I went from day one to graduation with my master's in 5 years, because I knew what I wanted to do. And I was equipped enough to decide what I wanted to do. But that's not what they're doing. And this is what. I couldn't have said it better. Exactly. And so again, I think, okay, so this is discovering career interests, defining career pathways, Okay, this really bothered me. ICAP and hope. And I started thinking about hope. Well, I mean, we've talked on the show about what hope is, and hope is in Jesus Christ. If, we're Christians, that's where our hope is. So I went out, and this is, I looked at the information in that presentation that we were just going through, and this goes back to Hope Rising. Hope Rising is an initiative created by Sarah Stitt, who is Governor Kevin Stitt's wife, and this is all about hope. And it is her organization. Hope Rising is a nonprofit organization that uses hope to impact our outcomes. Okay. So I was a little disappointed to see that that's where we were going. But that's legitimately, apparently, what we're using is Sarah Stitt's Hope Rising, building hope and resiliency. No, doesn't work that way. Resiliency actually is built when you hit a wall and you go, ow, my head really hurts. And you back up and you decide how not to hit that wall because you don't want to get smacked again. You don't just go, oh, I hope I don't hit the wall again. It's not. I mean, it's a hard lesson. Hard lessons build good character, not hope. And so I just, I mean, yes, we all need to not feel like tomorrow is the end of the world. Yes, we do need to have hope every day. And I'm not trying to put that down, but we don't instill hope as a way of developing resiliency or as a way of developing what you're going to be when you grow up. But that's actually not what this does. So the ICAP actually uses this hope method for evaluations, and then actually puts these into the database, and it talks about this here. So we're already at about an hour, and I don't want to go. Teach self-advocacy, self-determination skills, and employability skills. If this isn't an example of government becoming parent, I'm not sure that I know of a better one. And I don't know why we don't see it. And I know that, and I don't know why, even if we see it, we either don't want to believe it or it's okay. It's not okay. Government is not a parent. We do not want government raising children. And this is basically where we are. And I don't know, I think it's got something to do with that. And yes, I've heard that as well, that Sarah Stitt is pushing for community schools, which is, again, a communal model, communal socialist. It's bringing healthcare systems into schools. And what did I just say about data and healthcare in schools? Is it protected? No. HIPAA does not work in a public school, only FERPA does. And changing the meanings of words, I think, again, is really important. So we're coming up on the end of an hour, and I don't want to go on. Work-based learning. I do agree that it is a good thing for students to work their way through school. I mean, our kids always had to work while they were in school. It just was, and not just in college. I mean, in high school, we didn't pay for gas. I mean, we floated a little bit of their insurance, but they had to pay for gas and anything else. We weren't a money machine. We weren't an ATM. They had to do that. Well, a lot of the hard lessons that they learned were by having a job during the time that they were going to school. Work-based learning, you do that when you're on a job. That's not something has been shown to be one of the strongest predictors of adult employment. I think there is a whole lot of, and they track AP and IB, career tech internships, You can just work your way through this work-based learning. They have a whole thing. Now they're monitoring, they're showing you how they're monitoring all of this and the codes and this kind of thing. In closing out, yes, and that's true, Hillary, just like it takes a village. And we have apparently completely blown past this model of understanding what the idea behind freedom is. What really is freedom? What is individual liberty? I don't think we know anymore. And sadly, and the saddest part of it is I don't think we want to know. I think most people want to drop their kids off at a school and not worry about what happens because they're dropping their kids off at the school. They've done their job. They're moving on. And it's going to be a really sad day when we get to the point where, well, we already are, where students can read at 30% of proficiency and students can barely do math and students can't count back change when they're working. And all of this has to do with what's going on in our public school system. And collecting data clearly has not done what we were promised it was going to do when all of this was put in place initially. It has not helped our students learn. It's collected a lot of data on students and apparently illegal information, illegal data on students, but it has not helped to raise any proficiencies at all. There is no way we should be collecting any more data on students. There's no reason to have another state longitudinal database or a student information system or whatever you call it. We're collecting way more data on kids than we need to in the first place, and we don't need to really collect data on kids. We had better outcomes with student proficiency and education before we instituted all of this nonsense. And yet we still keep doubling down. And I think it's because we have a lot of people out there who are in the business of selling educators this stuff and they want to make money. And I get that, but that doesn't have anything to do with educating kids. All right, it is slavery, Julia. You're completely right. So I'm going to wind up because I don't want this so long that people don't go back and look through this. But those of you who have been on, I really do appreciate. I know it's 1:30 and everybody, well, now it's 2:30 and everybody could be doing something different with their time. But I do appreciate you watching this. Those of you who are concerned about what I said, share this immediately with people and say, hey, we really, really, more money is spent collecting data than teaching kids. And I think that's obvious. I mean, it's completely obvious. So please share this. Please let your legislator know immediately that this is not okay. We're not going to okay this. We should not move forward with any kind of more data collection schemes on any level. We have enough. It's not working the way it was promised in the first place. Doubling down isn't going to fix that. And for you Republicans who would support this, not sure how to quite square that away. You'll have to explain it to me. All right. Thank you for joining me on this, hopefully slightly brief, but hopefully very important hour where we talk about the government tracking our children. Please go to the piece of the article on our website where you can click through and find those documents that I went through today for yourself to look at those. Thank you. Thank you too, Sandy. Just can't tell you enough. Thank you. All right, guys, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time, and